Hi, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to our Reading Thucydides Peloponnesian War. We're still in Book 1, and we left off at chapter 78, 79, where we just had um, the, Cor- the Croatian, sorry, the Corinthians and many other of the allies of Sparta have gone to Sparta and asked Sparta to finally do something against Athens, right? And they had their speech. We saw that earlier. Now, then what happened was some Athenians who were doing business with Athens and some other thing heard what was going on, heard the speeches. They came forward and gave their own speech, trying to not responding to the specific charges, but about warning about the danger. Let's go back at 78 for a second, um, where he talked about that things. And now 79, we start off today reading 79. We left at 78, chapter 78. He goes, such were the words of the Athenians after the Spartans heard the complaints of allies against the Athenians and the observation of the latter. They made all withdrawal and consulted on by themselves on the question before them. The opinions of the majority led to the same conclusion. The Athenians were open aggressors, and the war must be declared at once. But Archidamus, the Spartan king, who had a reputation of being at once a wise and a moderate man, came forward and made the following speech. Now, this is Amadeus, the Spartan king speech. I have not lived so long, Spartans, without having the experience of many wars. And I see among you of the same age as myself, who will not fall into the common misfortune of longing for war from inexperience or from a belief in its advantage or its safety. The war on which we are now debating, will be one of the greatest magnitudes on the sober considerations. In other words, will be one of the greatest magnitude on a sober consideration of the matter. In a struggle with Peloponnese and neighbors, our strength, struggle with Peloponnesians and neighbors, our strength is of the same character, and it is possible to move swiftly on the different points. But a struggle with a people who live in different land, who have also extraordinary familiarity with the sea, who are in the highest state of preparation in every other department, with wealth, private and public, with ships, uh, horses, hoplites, and a population as no one other Hellenistic place can equal. And lastly, a large number of tributary allies, which can justify us in rashly beginning such a struggle. Well, what could justify a struggle, he answers, given all these facts, right? When, when is our trust that we should rush unprepared? Is it in our ships? There we are inferior. While if we are to practice and become a match for them, time must intervene. Is it our money? There we have far greater deficiency. We neither have it in our treasury, nor are we ready to contribute it from our private funds. So, okay, we're not ready to act, he's saying. Now, chapter 81. Confidence might possibly be felt in our superiority in hoplites and population, which will enable us to invade and devastate their lands. But the Athenians have plenty of other land in their empire and can import what they want by sea. We can destroy their farmland, we can destroy their lands. But if we do that, what happens? They have other lands, other territories elsewhere in their rights, and they can import it from sea. Again, if we were to attempt an insurrection of their allies, These will have to be supported with a fleet, most of them being islanders. What then is to be our war? For unless we can either beat them at sea or deprive them of revenues which they feed their navy, we shall meet little but disaster. So, in other words, he's saying that if they can't, he's warning them, saying, "Listen, they have navy, they're navy power. Um, so we best we can we don't can't match them on the navy, and it take years before we can match them on the navy. We can beat them as armies. We can go and capture their farm areas, their land, but they can just hide behind their walls and import all that they need from their allies and lands they have abroad. Therefore, feed themselves, import stuff through, import themselves in there. So it's going to war like this is thinking that we're going to get this. We're going to get what do you call? Going to cause trouble with their allies. Well, this would require us to have a navy to go out there and to like all their allies are islands and far away, and we have to go there, and we don't have a navy that well. Oh, they say, okay. Um, um, what then? Unless we can go eat and beat them in the sea and deprive them of the revenues of navies, we shall do little but disaster. Meanwhile, our honor will be pledged to keeping on, particularly if it be the opinion that we began the quarrel. In other words, particularly if it be that the opinion that we began the quarrel. For let us never be elated by the fatal hope of the war being quickly ended by the devastation of their lands. I feel rather that we may leave it as a legacy to our children. So improbable it is that the Athenian spirit will be the slave of their land, or Athenian experience, cowed by war. In other words, he doesn't think it's going to be the case that they will be they're so desperate for their land that if we get their land and devastate, they will lose, and that they will be cowed just by war. Now, next thing, a continuation here, 80, 82. Nor not that I would bid you to be so unfeeling as to suffer to suffer them to injure your allies, and to refrain from undertaking unmasking their intrigues. But I do bid you not to take up arms at once, but to send and remonstrate with them in a tone not too suggestive of war, nor again too suggestive of submission, and to employ the interval in perfecting our own preparations. In other words, we have to be better to prepare. The means will be first the acquisition of allies, Hellenistic or barbarian it matters not, or long as they are in ascension to in other words, as long as they are in accession to our naval strength, or our strength naval or financial. I say Hellenistic or barbarian because the odium of such an accession to all who, like us, are objects of the designs of the Athenians is taken away by the law of self preservation. And secondly, the development of our own home resources. If they listen to our embassy, so much the better. If not, after the lapse of 2 or 3 years on our position, will have become materially strengthened, and we can attack them if we think proper. Perhaps by that time, the sight of our preparations, backed by language equally significant, will have disposed them to submission. But their land is still untouched, and while their counsel may be directed to the retention of advantages of yet undestroyed. For the only light in which you can view their land is of that of a hostage in your hands. A hostage, the more variable, the better it is cultivated. This you ought to spare as long as possible, and not make them desperate, and so increase the difficulty of dealing with them. For while still unprepared, hurried on by the complaints of our allies, we are induced lay it waste. Have a care that we do not bring disgrace and deep perplexity upon the Peloponnesians. Complaints, whether of communities or individuals, it is possible to adjust, but war undertakes by a coalition for a sectional interest, whose progress there is by no means foreseen, may not be easy or credibly settled. And this is now 83, starting next thing. And none need think it cowardice for a large number of Confederates to pause uh, 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 before they attack a single city. The Athenians have allies as numerous as our own, and allies that pay tribute. And war is a matter not so much of arms as of money, which makes use of arms. And this is more than ever true in the struggle between continental and maritime power. First, then, let us provide money and not allow ourselves to be carried away by the talk of our allies before we have done so. And we have the largest share of responsibility for the consequences, be they good or bad, but also have a right to a tranquil inquiry respecting them. 84. Next paragraph continues. And the slowness and procrastination, the part of our character that are most assailed by their criticism, need not make you blush. If we undertake the war without preparations, we should by hastening its commencement only delay the conclusion. And further, a free and famous city has through all time has through all time been ours. In other words, our city. We've been the freest of the cities, and we should go proceed. The quality which they condemn is really nothing but wise moderation. Thanks to its possession, we alone do not become insolvent in success and give way less than others in misfortune. We are not carried away by pleasure of hearing ourselves cheered on to risks which our judgment condemns, nor if any annoyed, we are any the more convinced by attempts to exasperate us by accusation. We are both warlike and wise, and it is our sense of order that makes us so. We are warlike because self control contains honor as the chief const, constituent, constituent, and honor bravery. And we are wise because we are educated with no too little learning to despise the law. We are wise because we are educated with too little learning to despise the laws. Now, by what do you mean by that is that we're not really taught. We're not really taught to despise the laws. We are educated. We are not educated to despise the laws. It says, um, and with too severe a self control to disobey them. So we're not educated, and we have too much self control to disobey them, right? And are brought up not to be knowing in useless matters. In other words, we don't have frivolous or useless knowledge. We only have necessary knowledge, or knowledge that is useful for the city, um, uh, such as the knowledge which can give a specious criticism of an enemy's plan and theory, but fail to assail them with equal success in practice, but are taught to consider that the schemes of our enemies are not dissimilar to our own, and that the freaks of chance are not determinable by calculation. You can't calculate luck. You can't calculate freaks of chance. The unknown can happen. The unpredictable and unthinkable can happen. You have to be somewhat prepared for them, or not be shocked or unprepared for them, or totally unprepared for them. Fourth section, fourth line. Um, in practice, we always base our preparation against an enemy on the assumption that his plans are good. Indeed, it is right to rest our hope on a belief in his blunders, but on his soundness of provision. In other words, we shouldn't. In other words, he's basically arguing we shouldn't plan them making mistakes. We should make plans with them doing everything right. Okay? We shouldn't rely on their blunders for our things. We should, and on the soundness of our provisions. Nor ought we believe that there is much difference between man and man, but to think that the superiority lies in him who is reared with the severest school. In other words, it's not that men will be different. Those who have the severest education, the toughest thing, who have experienced life and do this, who are ready for real reality, and those who are not, that's the real difference. Not that human beings are any real different in that sense. These practices, then, with our ancestors, have delivered us, and by those maintenance we have always profited. They must not be given up, and we must not be hurried into deciding in a day brief species of in a day's brief space a question which concerns many lives and fortunes in many cities, and in which honor is deeply involved. But we must decide calmly. This is our strength particularly enables us to do. As for the Athenians, send to them on the matter of Patidane. Send on the matter of the alleged wrongs of allies, particularly as they are prepared to submit matters to arbitration. For one should not go. For one should not proceed against a party who offers arbitration as one would against a wrongdoer. Meanwhile, do not admit preparation for war. This decision will be best for yourselves and the most terrible to your opponent. And these were the words of Archidamus. Last came forward Smethiles, one of the Ephors for that year. This is the Ephors were they were elected officials, tributes, kind of executives that they were elected, and spoke to now if the king spoke, who was wise and moderate. Now, uh, uh, it's a tough little name, Sith, like Athene, Scythene ladies, Scythian ladies, the Ephor, one of the Ephors of that year. I think they have four efforts. I'm not sure. I have to go look at that memory. And spoke to the Spartans as follows: the long speech of the Athenians, I do not pretend to understand. They said a good deal in praise of themselves, but nowhere denied that they are injuring our allies in Peloponnese. And yet, if they behaved well against the Persians in the past, but ill towards us now, they deserve double punishment for having ceased to be good and for becoming bad. We, meanwhile, are in the same then and now, and shall not, if we are wise, disregard the wrongs of our allies, or put off till tomorrow the duty of assisting those who must suffer today. Others have much money and ships and horses, but we have good allies whom we must not give up to the Athenians, nor by lawsuits and words decide the matter. And it is anything but in words that we must be harmed. In other words, okay, this is it. Nor by lawsuits and words and decide the matter. And it is anything but in words that we are harmed, but render instant and powerful help. And let us not be told that it is fitting for us to deliberate under injustice, A long deliberation is neither fitting for those who have injustice in contemplation. Um, Vote, therefore, Spartans, for war as for honor demands, and neither allow for further aggrandizement of Athens, nor betray our allies to ruin. But with the gods, let us advance against the aggressors. So, therefore, this is a very short speech where the king gave a very, long and reasoned speech. This is just emotional. This is like, honor demands that no, I didn't understand those damn Athenians. They did blah blah. They didn't say they weren't guilty, and they, this is the F word comes here. This is a kind of a interesting thing. The king um, actually offers good advice in a sense. Wait, patience. We need time. If we're going to go to attack, if we're going to go to war with Athens, we need to be better prepared. We're not prepared. We're not ready. Uh, the F word just says, well, can't do that. Doesn't matter. Honor, honor, honor. And I think in many ways, this is a case. This is a short speech to the point, talking wholly on honor, not on and it's dishonorable to as our allies hurt. The Athenians may have been good before, now they're not. Therefore, we should punish them now. Who cares what they did? They didn't deny their problem with their wrongdoing. Let's not let. And by the way, let's not worry about arbitration. That's unmanly. We tough it out, man. This is the kind of this is like a very macho response. Um, Now we go to chapter 87. With these words, he, the Ephors, himself, put the question to the assembly. So the question: should we go to war? Now, Sathene, like Athene, no, Sathene, ladies, Ladis, Ledas. Seth had led us. He brings it. He puts it forward. The Spartans. He said that he could not determine which was the loudest acclamation. Their mode of decision was by acclamation, not by voting. In fact, being that he wished to make them declare their opinion openly, and thus to increase the ardor for war. Accordingly, he said, all Spartans who are of the opinions that the treaty has been broken and that the Athenians are guilty, leave your seats and go there, pointing to a certain place. And those who are the opposite opinion there. And accordingly, they accordingly stood up and divided. Those who held that the treaty had been broken were the decided majority. Summoning the allies, they told them that their opinion was that the Athenians had been guilty of injustice, but they wished to convoke all the allies and put it to a vote in order that they might make war, if they decided to do so on common resolution. Having thus gained their point, the delegates returned home at once. The Athenian envoy a little later, when they had dispatched the objects of their mission. This decision of the assembly, judging that the treaty had been broken, was made on the 14th year of the 30-year peace, which has entered into which was entered into after the affairs of Euboea. So this basically the Spartans vote to go to war, but they're going to have a meeting of the whole allies to make a form of resolution of the whole alliance. But this is the decision to go to war. The Spartans will break the peace. Will say that the peace has been broken and engage in war. Well, I'm going to end here. This is a short. I'm going to do this. Do the short one and then go to the next one a couple minutes from now, a different day, because we had a long one last time, and maybe it's not fair to have two long ones in a row. So I'll stop here and have a good day.